one of my craft students said to me, you ought to get into eggs. And I said, oh, I have all these crafts. I had everything possible. She said, well, I think you ought to get into eggs. So she said, there's a seminar in Cleveland at this certain weekend. Did I want to go? And I said, well, I'll go and give it a try. So I went and came home and said to Carl, I'm getting rid of all of these crafts. I'm getting into the eggs. So I've been doing eggs now for about, off and on for about 45 years.
That long?
Yeah, it's been quite a while.
Okay.
But along the way, when I was in the craft store, I had 2 melanomas, so I had to, I couldn't be as active as I wanted to, but I was out mowing the lawn one day and this fellow came down to see Carl and he said, I thought you had cancer. And I said, I do, but I don't have time for it. I got a lot of work to do. So I ended up getting a second one, and then I got interested in more interested into the egg. So it was off and on, but it was about 45 years ago that I started, but I slowed down a little bit. I took a Kelly job somewhere along the way, and one of the places I ended up working was over at Packard. And so I worked there for about, 6 months or more, in their invoice department also. And then that's when I got the cancer. That's when the cancer started.
Mm. Okay, so you have gained a lot of notoriety for your eggs.
If you're having a hard time deciding what to get that person on your Christmas list who has everything, well, your problem may be solved. We've discovered an artist in our own backyard whose work may someday be a collector's item.
No, it's not just a music box. It's a music box inside a decorated ostrich egg. In the style of Fabergé, Ruth Jennings has made hundreds of designs in eggs. But unlike Fabergé, hers are out of the real thing, like quail, emu, rhea, goose, and other eggshells. You'd think trying not to break them would be the hardest part of this art form.
Getting it marked straight and designing it is probably the hardest part of the egg. Working on it is easy. Working on it is fun, really.
Fun, yes, but to most it would seem tedious as well, using dentist drills and tweezers.
I think it's time consuming. It's not the patience so much as it is time consuming, and 2 or 3 hours can go by and you don't really realize that the time has flown that fast.
For the past 17 years, Jennings has made the eggs and teaches the form at her Alcraft store in Brookfield. Some of her favorites, Betsy Ross sewing the flag. The fireplace lights up. Some of the eggs are seasonal, a ski scene, nativity, and a flying Santa.
The tree inside the house was decorated before we put it in the house. It's called The Night Before Christmas.
Jennings has given some of the eggs away as gifts, like this cloth. She usually only sells some of the small ornaments, though, because it's too hard to part with the others.
I really do hate to part with them because, I don't know, I put a lot of time and a lot of work into them, and I just feel like they're mine. You know, and selling them, I'm selling a part of me, I guess.
That may be changing, though. Jennings, for the first time, sold some of her eggs at a recent holiday craft show at the Butler. She's considering selling some more. The prices vary from $10 to $1,000. For Newswatch 27, I'm Bridget Mahoney.
You know, newspapers, TV, those kind of things.
Oh, my, yes. I've had people in the store from Japan, Australia, the Netherlands, Canada, England. They all came to the States for a show or something, and they all came to the store. And not a whole lot of people from Brookfield. A lot of them still don't even know what I do. But these people, we would travel a lot of shows. Carl and I think we've been about in every state, traveling back and forth with going to egg shows. Yeah, it's been quite an experience.
And it's been a huge part of your life.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, doing these eggs and then having classes. I would have classes on Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, and all day Saturday. And for years I had classes. I'd have 20 students a week that would take classes. Yeah, eggs have been a very big part of my life. So I did, I held a show at the Metroplex in Youngstown, in Girard, really, for 10 years. And that's when a lot of people came from a lot of different countries, because these are Fabergé style eggs, and it's an art rather than a craft. And so we used the real egg shells and used a similar to a dental air tool to cut them open, and we also used a Dremel and had to watch for the dust. So Carl built me dust collectors. He did a lot of electrical wiring for the eggs, not only for me but for other people, doing a lot of lights inside eggs, music boxes that turned around and so forth. So yeah, it's been an interesting life. But it's been interesting living here. It's got kind of, Grandpa and I got along, 21 years living with someone. That's a record. But he was good. He was a religious man. He went to church or drove up till he was 95. He lived to be 101. Well, 1 month from being 101, and went to church almost every Sunday. And but he was up every morning at 6:30, cooked his own breakfast, and out on the tractor working in the garden. And talk about cooking breakfast. He would cook the boys oatmeal every morning for breakfast before they went to school. So that was a big help for me.
Sure. Okay, so I'm gonna pick your brain now and see what you know about. Tell me about what you know about your father, Max Bible, his life. What do you know about, like, when he was born, where he was born?
He was born in Tennessee, and gosh, I forget the year, but he went to the service, and he was I don't know if he had the degree or not, but he was a nurse at in the service. He was stationed in New York someplace, and he worked in their hospital as a nurse.
Okay.
And he married, and his first wife passed away, but they had Maxwell, and that was about the time that she passed away. So Maxwell was the first brother that I had, stepbrother, and he had a good mind on his head, and he moved to Cleveland and worked in a steel mill in Cleveland. And then Sharon Steel heard about him, and they hired him. So he worked at Sharon Steel for 20 years, superintendent of the coal roll department.
Okay.
And then when Henry Jr. took over, he got rid of a lot of those original people. So my dad went to Crucible Steel in Midland, and that's when we moved to East Liverpool.
Okay, so that was only for a couple years you lived there?
Yeah.
Okay, did he?
And he had at Sharon Steel, he had a patent on oil for running in the steel mill and he had to leave that patent at Sharon Still. And there's people that have worked after that that said they saw that patent that he had. So he had a, I don't know if it was the same recipe, I'll call it, for rolling steel, oil for steel, and he sold that after he left Crucible. There was a place in Pittsburgh that hired him, and he would have all this oil, and he worked out, even though he worked out of Brookfield, they bought a home in Brookfield, and sold the one on the farm, but he would I would go with him over to Pennsylvania. He would deliver gallons and gallons of this oil for running in the steel mill. Then my mother, of course, I don't know, I think they were probably married. They had to have been married in Tennessee, because when they moved to Cleveland, it was after that that they had their first child, had Marianne.
Okay. All right, so, and then what about your mom?
I don't know.
Well, she had, tell me the siblings' names.
My mother had
Well, her name was...
twin sisters that caught on fire and burned. They were playing with the fire outside or something, and their dresses caught on fire, and they burned to death.
Wow.
And then she had, my mother has, that would be my mother's sisters. So she had 3 brothers and 3 sisters, and then they had others that didn't live. I mean, they lived for a while, but so I knew those 6 that she had. And when they moved to the farm, her one sister and husband lived with them for a while, and then they eventually bought a home in Sharon. But Mom was constantly cooking, constantly, and see, Marianne had stayed in the house and learned to do a lot of the cooking for company.
And what were their names?
But there was, first one was Vance, and the second one they called him Tom, but his name was Cluster, and Eddie, and Rethel, Noel, Ruby.
And your mom's name?
Zula, Z-U-L-A.
Okay, so you got some southern names there, right?
And the name was Webb, W-B-B, Webb, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's, supposedly, there's a letter somewhere, I have a letter that someone wrote that some relative, the Indians captured her, supposedly, and so she ended up marrying them and having children. So I have not had any tests to see if I have Indian blood, but rumor has it that there was Indian blood in the family.
Okay, okay.
So Mom had, oh gosh, before she died, she had about 65 or 70 grandchildren. You know, between the 7 of us, and, yeah, she had all those. So she's been gone now 20 years, 22, 21.
Around 2000, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. She was an amazing lady.
Yeah, she really was.
Right.
Yeah, she taught me to sew, and when I moved here, I did a lot of sewing. I did shirts for the boys and covers for the furniture, did myself a spring coat. You know, I'd like to sew, and got into these crafts because my grandmother started it, and then Mom got into it, and then yeah, but it's just something, I guess, that to the family we did all of this.
Do you have any kind of message that you think people should know? Any philosophy? Anything?
I don't know. I think they should stay active. You know, to stay healthy, and if you want to live to be 90. But and be true to one another, and have a believe in your religion, and you know, treat people the way you want to be treated.
Okay, that's good.
I would like to have gone to college, but I'm glad now that I didn't. I'm glad I did what I did.
Okay.
You know, it's been quite an experience. The experience is getting old.
Right.
Yeah. So I've got a lot of dishes, a lot of glassware that came from Germany. Carl's granddad came from Germany, and a lot of old stuff that was in the house when I moved in.
Okay.
Stuff that I would never have had, or probably would never have seen some of it had I not moved here.
Right. Right. Okay, I think we're going to stop for now. I want to thank you for doing this. I'm glad you did. You know, I've learned a lot of things.
Well, I thank you, and I hope I told you what you wanted
Well,
to.
if we think of something else, we'll come back to it sometime.